पदमौलिपर्यन्तां गुरूणामाकृतिस्फलितेन विघ्नप्रणश्यन्ति सिद्धिश्च लक्ष्मीन्तनोतुमितरामितरानपेक्षममृतोऽयं निगमशाखेशिखाप्रवाल हैरम्बमम्बुर्हाडम्बरचौर्यनिग्रहं विघ्नाद्रिभेदशतधारधुरन्धर्णः सर्वेषां स्वागतम्. So this is the positive psychology session. So since we have learnt about aham bhava, we try to understand its linguistic equivalence in positive psychology, which is the ego. So we've all heard about what ego is and we have a fair understanding of it. We'll try to understand it as per the topic. So here ego refers to the sense of self or individuality that distinguishes ourselves from others. So it has a number of components. Ego is one umbrella term used for, not umbrella term, it is a cover for a number of things. So what we are seeing, ego has different parts, like for example, one's thoughts, one's attitude towards oneself, that is thinking highly of oneself, that way, feelings, experiences, the way they try to stand out in a crowd, shaping their identity, their personality, their behavior, everything. So here ego brings about primarily self-awareness. That is one component of ego. So one must be available, the ability to recognize oneself as an individual identity, like thinking that you are unique. That is self-awareness, knowing how you can differentiate from others. That is a component. Now, while we say this, we are not saying that ego is bad. That is the primary difference between aham bhava over here. Aham bhava and ahankara. This is an equivalent of to ahankara, not exactly aham bhava. But we will further see how there is a healthy ego and unhealthy ego. There it is more related to the results that it gives. So one of the components of ego is self-awareness. Self-awareness over here is actually good when used for a positive thing. Like for example, when I know how to recognize my own ability, when I, like for example, when I'm given a same task as somebody else and somebody is able to complete it better, there I'm trying to find value in my work. That can be good. So that is self-awareness. Then there is self-identity. Self-identity can be a collection of traits, experiences that can define a person. Like for example, I worked so many years in a so industry, so there might be speciality involved in my knowledge as compared to somebody else. A person who has worked anywhere has a special knowledge as compared to a person who has read things, because experience is the best teacher, like that. So self-identity can be anything that has led to build up of that personality, of our personality. It can be experiences, it can be certain traits, it can be the way we talk, so style statement, how we dress, aesthetics, all these things together. Then self-esteem, what is our worth? How much do we value ourselves, our own opinion? We sometimes, when overthinking comes into play, we tend to question our own choices. Self-esteem, if it is very strong, that is, if we value our own opinion, then we will not fall into the trap of questioning ourselves too much. The initial questioning, yes, to reach a conclusion. After a conclusion is reached, then we won't hesitate. So that part will be gone. So self-esteem, so it is evaluation of one's own worth, value, and competence. Then self-image, how do we see ourselves? Some people have this very now due to overdrive of social media, people become very image conscious, where they feel we are fat, we are thin, etc., etc., etc. All that thinking. But having a good mental picture of one's self, that is how we that actually influences how we interact with the world, because it largely gives us the confidence that we need to interact with the society. So these are the four components: that is self-awareness, self-esteem, self-identity, and then self-image. These are the components of what we call as ego. Now, what does this do? This ego, it needn't necessarily be bad in any way. Ego can actually contribute, because, like I said, ego is the equivalent of ahankara, not ahambhava. So it can have different effects, like boundary setting. Boundary setting will help us uh, like distinguishing ourselves. So this is what I can do. Self-awareness also comes with certain limitations. This is something that I can't do, is also uh, distinguishing ourselves. So boundary setting. Then self-protection. Self-protection is basically a defense mechanism, ability to defend ourselves against somebody or against any um, threats. Threats can be persons, it can be situations, etc., etc. Then identity formation. Ego helps us, like what I said about self image. Ego helps us with forming our own identity, having our own set of values, distinguishing ourselves from the regular from the society, basically. Next, it can also be a reason, it can also be a source of motivation for many to seek certain goals. Like, for example, somebody wants to try civil services. Now, his ego will actually help him to work towards that particular goal of his. That can be a set of motivation. Like, I'm able to do this, why am I not able to do that? The whole process looks very scary, but we'll take it one at a time. One step at a time can actually make us do it. I can certainly crack the prelims, then maybe the mains, and after that, maybe the interview after that. Like that, let's take one at a time. So it doesn't sound so scary if you look at it in that way. So this kind of motivation can actually help. So ego can be used for positive stuff as well. So there are functions of ego that can give us positive results. Not much, because what happens is, when we do not uh, when we do not understand ego, and then when it doesn't take a break. Everybody has ego at that. It just originates because we are interacting and we think. Therefore, there is going to be that thought, and there's going to be a frame up of how we think. So if we do it without being aware of it, then there are chances where we tend to ignore the negative effects of it. But there is a very we've seen the in our ancient scriptures also, when Buddhism also tries to say that ego is an illusion. That is basically saying that creating a separate identity has no meaning, because Buddhism actually believes that the cultivation of mindfulness and self-awareness must transcend ego boundaries. That is reaching Buddha, Bauddhic Buddha. So we have to cross that Bauddhic nature, and then we have to reach the Buddha. That is the realization, that stage, self-actualization, that stage it must reach. Then there are different in Hinduism also there is manifestation, that it leads to a manifestation, as we've seen. Ahankara leads to manifestation of the jiva. So that isn't necessarily wrong. Advaita, however, believes in Mayavada. Therefore, we are not we our ultimate goal is to merge with the Paramatma. Therefore, here the whole set of ego faculties have been rejected. Here we have different, because this is a very core topic of psychology. So we have different people who are speaking about this, like Sigmund Freud, and then there is Jungian analytical psychology, different people. So there are different perspectives of ego. So all these things are basically trying to say, Freud says, in his view, psychoanalysis is the ego is a mediator between the conscious and the unconscious mind, and it is responsible for regulating the impulses and maintaining the social norms. This is what Freud says. Then Jungian analytical psychology is, it sees ego as a central aspect of personality. It's something that creates a personality. A personality has been created, but this is the origin of it, which must be integrated with the unconscious and the collective conscious to achieve individualization. So this, there are different ways. There are more, actually. There are many people who have spoken about this, because over time this has become a uh, very popular topic. So there is one guy called as Daniel Kahneman. He's a Nobel-winning psychologist, and then there is Kristen Neff, etc., etc. But we will not go into that, because that is not the main aim of it. But understanding ego, what we need to understand at this stage is, ego needn't necessarily be bad. We've used it in that lingo. The usage of the term has become so, it has become a negative connotation. It has gained that kind of a reputation of being bad. Okay, that person's doing this because of his ego. It's always blamed that way. No, here ego is basically a state. It is understanding everything about ourselves. It is a concept where there is well-being also, there is personal growth also, where there is happiness also. All that can be associated with it. It needn't necessarily be bad as such. So it's basically uh, a sense of self or individuality that distinguishes a person from others. That's all. So we'll see the rest of it, the unhealthy and the healthy ego, in the next session. स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः प्रतिपालयन्तां न्यायेन मार्गेण महीमहीषा गोब्राह्मणेभ्यो शुभमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि।